Mexican forces stormed a Culiacan tower and killed El Texas, the plaza boss known as One, but 4 armed men were caught alive in the parking lot moments before he fell. So who exactly are these 4 Sicarios? Let's break it down. The night of the raid. Before you can place 4 men in a parking lot, you have to know the war they belong to.
Well, it looks like the war in Sinaloa is finally coming to an end, and the Chapitos—
that is the world these 4 lived in, a faction under pressure, losing ground, burning through men. And on the evening of July 7, 2026, that war came to a condominium tower in Culiacan. The time was close to 6 p.m. The place was the north side of the city. The target was a tower called Paralela Park Residencial. It sits on Boulevard Jose Limon in the Infonavit Humaya area. The building has gated access and more than one way out. Authorities acted after a phone tip. The call came in through the 89 line. The caller reported armed men in the parking area of the complex. 2 forces moved in. Soldiers from the Mexican army, known as Sedena, worked with the state police. The state unit was the Grupo de Operaciones Especiales, or GUs. One group brought firepower, the other brought local knowledge. The teams went to the parking lot first. They found a group there. 4 men were getting ready to leave. The 4 tried to drive off in 2 cars. One was a Chevrolet Aveo, the other was a Nissan Versa. Neither car had been reported as stolen. That detail would matter later. The 4 men were stopped before they could leave. Reports name them only by first name. They are Marco, Hugo, Eduardo, and Kevin. Some outlets add an N after each name to mark a last name that was held back. There was no major fight in the parking lot. The men were detained. The teams then set a line around the building. With the outside under control, the teams moved inside. This is the part of the night that turned deadly. The man they were after had not run. He had done what men like him always do.
He was smart enough to always keep himself under a roof.
That habit describes El Texas on this night. He stayed inside while his men held the lot. When the teams pushed into the building, gunfire came from one of the departments. He was holed up there. Reports say he fired at them. The teams fired back. Perez was killed at the scene. No soldiers or state police were reported hurt. That points to control of the room, not a long standoff. The site was then locked down, worked for evidence, and the 4 men and the seized items were moved into federal hands. The whole event ran from the tip to the end over several hours and into the night, and it stayed at that one location that matters. Past raids in Culiacan have spilled into roadblocks and citywide shootouts, the kind of chaos locals call narcobloqueos. This time, the fight did not leave the tower. That points to planning and speed over brute force, a raid built to hit and pull back before the city could catch fire. So look at how the 4 were placed, because it was not random. This is how a boss like El Texas builds his safety.
Or could get close to this man by land. He has concentric rings of security around him.
That is the design in one line. The boss sits in the core. Rings of men sit around him. Marco, Hugo, Eduardo, and Kevin were the outer ring out in the lot by the cars. Their spot marks them as support and perimeter security, not leadership. They were the shell built to soak up the first hit, and an outer ring has one job above all when the soldiers come. It sounds the alarm.
His men radioed out and alerted everybody.
That is what the ring is for. It calls out the threat and buys the boss time to run, fight, or hide. The army broke that plan by taking the 4 first. No warning went out, no cover fire came, no one pulled El Texas through the back. Why does one plaza boss and 4 guards matter this much? Because of the size of the fight standing behind them.
between the Maisa and the Chapisa that is still ongoing and has killed upwards of 10,000 people.
That is the stakes. These 4 were not corner kids. They were the armed ring around a piece in a war that has buried thousands. To understand them, you have to see what was in their hands. That starts with the arsenal. The arsenal. The gear pulled from that tower tells its own story. This was not a warehouse of drugs. It was a mobile war kit, built to keep one man alive and moving. Investigators seized one machine gun, chambered in 5.56 millimeters. Next to it lay a rack of rifles. Reports count between 6 and 7 of them. Most were AK-47 style rifles. At least one was an AR-15. This is the classic Sinaloa mix, the tough Soviet pattern rifle sitting right beside the sleek American platform. You might ask if all that hardware was really theirs, or if it was staged on raids like this. That question comes up fast. The answer, from men who have studied these scenes, is blunt.
I don't think they were dropped there by anybody. I think
the guns were not planted. They belonged to the crew, and they were there for a single reason.
These cartel guys had them for their defense.
Defense of the boss and defense of themselves. Then came the ammunition. More than 3,000 rounds were recovered across different calibers. Some were loaded into linked belts, ready to feed a machine gun. A share of it was .50 caliber. That is a heavy round. It can punch through engine blocks, doors, and light armor. It is the kind of round you keep to stop a convoy or hold off an armored push. 2 fragmentation grenades were also on hand. Grenades change the math of any raid. They turn a doorway into a kill zone and give a cornered crew a way to break contact. The kit went further. Teams found tactical vests fitted with ballistic plates. They found radios for tactical talk. Plates and radios are not the tools of a street corner lookout. They are the tools of men who train, move as a unit, and expect to trade fire with soldiers. The radios matter more than they look. Cell phones get traced, calls get intercepted. Cartels learned this the hard way through years of arrests, so the crews went back to radios to stay a step ahead of the people listening in. It is the same lesson the whole trade keeps relearning. Where does a kit like this come from? Not from one shop. The rounds, the rifles, and the heavy calibers point to steady supply lines that cross the border in both directions.
It was all cartel. It was all coming from Mexico.
That line is about drugs moving north, but it maps the same pipes that move guns south. Weapons flow into Sinaloa, product flows out. The border is a two-way street, and cells like this one sit on it. The reporting ties this arsenal to the broader Chapito supply network for exactly that reason. Alongside the hardware sat something smaller. Reports list around 100 doses of presumed cocaine. That amount is tiny for a cartel. It was not a supply for a city. It was likely for personal use, small sales, or payments. It fits a security crew, not a trafficking hub. So why keep this much firepower on hand at all times? Because the men who hold it keep dying, and the ones left standing have to be ready every hour.
Who they badly need because, let's face it, so many of them keep dying in the war.
That is the engine behind the arsenal. In a shooting war, a plaza crew is armored, belt-fed, and ready to fight in seconds because a slow crew is a dead crew. And of course there were the 2 clean cars, the Aveo and the Versa, both part of the seizure. A clean car draws no eyes and no database hits. It lets a crew slide through a middle-class neighborhood like anyone else. Put it together and you get a self-contained protection package, heavy rifles, belt-fed power, grenades, armor comms, clean transport. A little product? The 4 men fit inside it like gears in a machine. The vests and rifles were theirs to carry. The radios were theirs to work. The cars were theirs to drive for the army. Taking this kit did 2 jobs at once. It stripped the cell of its power to hit back or hold ground in the short term, and it opened a door. Serial numbers, fingerprints, and DNA on all that gear can trace lines upward towards suppliers and bosses higher in the chain. A pile of seized guns is not just a seizure, it is a map. They were the guns, but guns still have faces and names, and on that front, the record goes quiet. The 4 men. Here's the strange thing about 4 men at the center of a national headline. We barely know who they are. The public record on them is thin on purpose. Media and officials name them only by first name: Marco, Hugo, Eduardo, Kevin. Often an N is stuck on the end to mark a last name that has been held back. There are no confirmed full names. There are no birth dates. There are no mugshots. There are no long rap sheets in the reporting. As of the days after the raid, no full identities had been released. That silence tells you something by itself. These were not famous Sicarios. A known enforcer picks up a nickname over the years. He shows up in corridos. He leaves a trail. Marco, Hugo, Eduardo, and Kevin carried none of that weight in the press. No corrido, no alias, no legend. That points to men who were recent, low-level, or simply kept clean for this exact job. There is a second read on that low profile worth naming. It may not be that they were nobodies. It may be that clean men were picked on purpose for city work. A face with no record and no nickname draws less heat. It can drive through a gated complex without raising a flag. For a boss hiding in a middle-class tower, quiet men are an asset, not a weakness. So why do young men take a job like this at all? The pull is not just money, it is belonging, status, and the sense that someone powerful has your back.
Lead me to believe that he was very much a hero for at least the people around him and the people in the community that he benefited.
That is the sales pitch of the trade. In neighborhoods where good jobs are scarce, the cartel offers a place, a name, and a form of protection. Young men with few open doors take the one that is open, but the reality behind the pitch is grim, and the ledgers of these bosses prove it.
He was paying his soldiers, in the ledger they found, less than the minimum wage in Mexico.
Read that again. The men who carry the rifles and take the risk are often paid less than than a store clerk. That is the deal at the bottom of the ring. Cheap labor, high risk, and no fame. It fits 4 men in a parking lot, with no dossier and no nickname. The reporting leans on this same read, marking them as support and perimeter muscle rather than bosses. From there, you can sketch their day-to-day. Between raids, men like this watch rivals, move people in gear, and take part in the ugly side of a plaza, from extortion to debt collection to scaring people into line. The heavy rifles, grenades, and vests found with them back this up. This was armed muscle, ready for a defensive stand or an offensive push. And here's the part that makes their capture bigger than 4 arrests. The state that took them is the same state that has reached the very top of this world.
When Mexican special forces raided his ranch outside Culiacan, arrested, and then immediately...
That line is about a Guzman son being seized and sent north. If the machine can take a son of El Chapo, it can lean hard on 4 low-level guards. And that pressure is exactly why they matter now. Dead men tell no stories. Live men in a cell do. Their arrest hands authorities a possible window into El Texas and his world. These 4 sat inside his routine. They knew his cars, his safe spots, his contacts. It also puts them in a vice. On one side is the state, offering deals for what they know. On the other is what remains of the group, which does not love the idea of members talking. Their surnames are hidden, their faces are not public. Their role was the ring around a plaza boss, and their real value now is not their rank. It is what they saw. To see why that is worth so much, you have to know the man they guarded and the machine he served. The chain of command. The 4 men did not float free. They were bolted to a chain of command, and the first link above them was the man who died inside that tower. Christian Guadalupe Perez Perez, El Texas, or One, was no street soldier. Reporting describes him as the plaza boss for Culiacan and a coordinator of Sicario cells. A plaza boss runs a territory. He manages the enforcers. He guards the leaders who pass through. He keeps the machine of extortion, theft, and violence turning. The 4 in the lot were part of that machine, most likely as his support and mobility crew. These armed cells are the backbone of the faction. They run the daily grind of a plaza. They manage extortion rackets, they run vehicle theft rings, they carry out targeted killings against rivals, and they guard the higher members moving through the city and the Sierra. The 4 fit the lowest rung of that ladder, the men who drive, watch, and shoot on command. The group he served has a name this world knows well. It is the Los Chapitos faction of the Sinaloa cartel, also called La Chapiza, and its leadership sits inside one famous family.
And the Chapitos, the faction of the cartel led by the surviving sons of former drug lord Joaquin Chapo Guzman.
The faction is run mainly by the sons of Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, with their father in a United States prison. The sons took the wheel, but their rise came with blood, and it started with a betrayal that lit the whole war.
Who had set up Mayo to be kidnapped, and hence what led to the war.
That double cross split the cartel in 2 and set the Chapitos against the rival Maiza. From the top of the surviving faction, one name kept rising.
Ivan Archivaldo becomes the figurehead of the Chapitos and goes into hiding.
Ivan Archivaldo Guzman Salazar plays a central role in the faction's decisions. Men like El Texas sit below figures like him. They take orders from the top and push them to the street. And even with a leader in hiding, the machine keeps running.
Sierra Madre Mountains. And despite Ivan being on the run, the cartel is still able to keep operating.
That is the bridge El Texas lived on. He balanced city plaza duties with ties to the Sierra, the mountain country around Barrio Aguato that the Guzman family calls home. He ran the streets of the capital while staying wired into the hills. So how does a boss like that stay untouched for so long? The answer is not just guns. It is a payroll that runs straight through the state.
The local and the federal police, as well as the military.
That is the buffer. Bosses in this world are known to pay across the ranks. From local cops to federal forces, that is what makes a clean, fast raid like the one on El Texas stand out. Someone talked or someone watched, and the buffer failed that night. So where do the 4 men land on this map? Near the bottom, but not off it. They are operational support inside a plaza boss's crew. They shield the commander, they move him. They react when threats appear. Lower members form the outer shell. The boss sits in the core. The orders flow down from the sons at the peak. Their loyalty was not to a brand, it was to a boss, and through him to a family and a war. This is also where I draw a hard line on what the record supports. Some accounts tie El Texas to a line of fallen security chiefs before him and to rumored outside help for the faction. Those threads are not confirmed. I am keeping them out of the spine of this story and flagging them at the end. What is solid is this: 4 men guarded a plaza boss. That plaza boss served the sons of El Chapo. Those sons are locked in a war that has drained their ranks. When El Texas fell and his men were taken, that war took another hit. What that hit means is the last part of the story: the fallout. The last question is the one that outlives the raid. What does the loss of El Texas and his 4 men actually change? Start with the hole it leaves. His death opens a gap in the day-to-day running of the Culiacan Plaza. A plaza boss is a hinge orders from the top pass through him to the street. Take him out and the hinge breaks. The 4 arrests deepen the gap. They pull experienced hands out of the cell right when the faction needs every reliable body. And this loss lands on a group that has been bleeding for years.
They've been so weakened over the past decade, first with the arrest of Chapo, then his son Ovidio.
That is the backdrop. The father is gone, a key son was arrested and sent north, and the war with the rivals has ground down their fighters. Then came the loss of a major ally, and the collapse of the political cover that shielded them. Each blow stacks on the last.
And now this war with the Maitos and the death of their ally, Mencho, the politicians in Culiacan were their last lifeline.
And now the men at the very top are said to be looking for a way out.
That Ivan Archivaldo and Alfredo Guzman Salazar, Chapo's only remaining sons left running the cartel.
When the heads of a cartel are weighing surrender, the loss of a plaza boss and his ring is not a small thing. It is another crack in a wall that is already failing. But a takedown is